Hello, everyone. My name is Erin from the Philatelist E project, and today we'll be demonstrating the collector step of the Philatelist patch program with our friend Stacy. So this is going to be step 2 of the collector requirement, which is to observe a stamp collection. You and your troop should, with the help of someone in your community and with your leaders, invite someone to your troop setting to show and tell about a stamp collection. And you're going to ask them lots of questions about their collection, how they got started, what they like to collect, and any other fun details you want to know about stamp collecting. So we're going to be demonstrating that step today with Stacy. She is the founder of the Women Who Stamp project, which is part of her Masters of Fine Arts thesis. And we are both members of the digital philately community. So we connected over Instagram, and I'm going to go through some questions with her to kind of show this step. So to start with, Stacy, tell us about your history with stamp collecting. When and why did you start collecting and studying stamps?
I actually am a fairly new collector. I've only been collecting for about 5 years. And it started because I'm a graphic designer, that's my career. And as I was designing like invitations for birthday parties or weddings or different events, I started to get frustrated with the stamps that were available at the post office. Like you normally will just go to the post office and whatever they have, and you're kind of stuck with it. But I really wanted the themes to be more appropriate. So I started researching online. I'm sort of a researcher by nature. I enjoy researching a lot of different things. And I found vintage stamps, and I just opened up a whole new world of possibilities. And it didn't take very long for me to start collecting after I saw the variety that was available. There were so many different topics and so many beautifully designed stamps that it sort of snowballed fairly quickly. And then from there, I started doing postcard swapping so I could see stamps from around the world. It was an easy way to sort of do that. And then I noticed covers, like first day covers and cachet artist and pictorial postmarks, and I was kind of hooked after that. One of my favorite things when I collect covers is when the art and the stamp and the postmark all kind of come together and create this really like well-balanced theme. So yeah, and I think, I embraced the term philatelist fairly early on. I was like, I like stamps, I'm a philatelist. And then as I learned more about it and learned that a lot of people feel that stamp collecting is the study of stamps versus just collecting, I was like, well, I totally do that too. As I said, I'm a researcher by nature. And so I was already looking into the history of the designer, or, oh, what does this stamp represent? Or the country it comes from, where is that country? And some really cool things are like countries that were only their own like sort of federal thing for a while. And so they only have stamps from like a certain period in time. And, I learned about countries I never even knew had once existed because of stamp collecting. So yeah, it kind of snowballed quickly, but it's only been about 5 years for me.
Yeah, it sounds like we're in the collecting world for very similar reasons. Again, I'm a fairly new collector too, maybe only about 3 or 4 years, but it seems like we started with just kind of appreciation for the looks of stamps. And then we said, well, we want to know more about them. So we dug deeper and deeper until now we're learning about so many new things.
Yeah.
Because of our stamp collecting hobby. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So our next question is, why do you find philately to be an important subject in 2022 when a lot of stuff is, of course, emailed and texted and put on social media? What is still cool about mail?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think the fact, like you mentioned, the technology, I think that's one of the reasons I like philately so much, is that it's really important, I think, to disconnect from all of that. And while it's sort of an interesting thing because philately does have this online community, and so it's amazing to connect and see all of this stuff online, at the same time, it's really nice to just be able to disconnect and like sort your collection. And, you're kind of in your own world. There's no rules, you can collect how you want to collect, what you want to collect. And even though a lot of people might tell you, oh, well, this is philately and that's not philately, when it comes down to it, you collect the way you want to collect. And of course, if you want to archive and make sure your collection is preserved, there are, ways to do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's also a lot of stamp artists, and they take stamps that are of very little value and create these beautiful pieces using them. And so if that inspires them, then I think that's wonderful. Um, I also think it's a really good hobby, because it's one that you can take a break from when you need to. So all of us go through all these periods in life where you might need a week off, you might need a month off, you might need a year off. It kind of can ebb and flow, but your stamp collection will always be there. Like you can leave it in a box, half sorted and half organized, and it's not going anywhere. And so I really like that aspect, because there have been times when I have had to step away from it, and whenever I return to it, I'm just so excited to return to it.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
great.
mean, I know a lot of people mention the educational aspect of stamp collecting. We talked about that. You can learn so much geography and history and about artwork and the printing process. And there's a lot of education behind stamp collecting. But for me, I think in this day and age, I think in 2022, I think one of the driving forces is that you can just kind of disconnect when you need to disconnect. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's a great hobby for relaxing, for stress relief. If you like organizing or art or history or any of those kind of subjects, there's a place in stamp collecting for you. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So speaking a little bit more about our personal collections, do you have any favorite topics to collect, or do you even have a favorite stamp? I know it's pretty hard to choose, but what are your favorites?
I do. I mean, I have topics that I have a lot of topics that I like to collect. Like I said, art, women's issues. I have like nature stamps, but it's not like a well focused
I have the
collection.
same thing. Yeah, things like forestry and like national
Yeah,
parks and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah. But I do one of the series that got me into stamp collecting was the love stamps. And so I do have one of my very favorite love stamps. Yes. Oh, and you have it right there. One of my
Yeah.
favorite love stamps, I have it here too, is
Oh, I
the
love that.
one,
Yep, that one's right in the middle for me.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it was issued in 1982, which happens to be the year I was born too. And I
Special.
just really liked the floral treatment.
Yeah.
It's a stamp that I really like. I like the size because it's from, that period in time when the stamps were a little bit larger.
Yeah. See, there's more detail. Yeah.
Yes. And so
And
I
also, I
love,
like how a lot of the other stamps it says love very bold, but this one it's a
yeah,
little more like you got to look at it closer, which then just
yeah,
more interested in the designs. Yeah.
you could almost miss it.
True.
So, that's one of my favorite love stamps. And so I did sort of start by collecting love stamps, but very quickly, I got into space stamps.
Me
I've,
too.
I've
Yes.
always been interested in space from the time I was a kid. I loved reading about it and learning what I could. At one point, I'm pretty sure I thought I was going to be an astronomer, but then I picked art instead. So I have a lot, my largest collection, my largest focused collection is space for sure. And within that is Apollo 11. And
Yeah.
that sort of happened. I mean, I'm just fascinated by travel to the moon and beyond, but the fact that people have been on the moon, I think is really fascinating.
Yeah.
And the 50th anniversary came up a couple years ago, and the stamps that were being produced like around the world were just phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch here because I couldn't pick a favorite.
Yeah.
So I have this one. This is from Canada. And it is, I should turn off, hold on. I should probably turn off this blur if I can. I'm so sorry.
No,
It's
it's
kind
okay. The
of,
it's a
let's,
nice sense of suspense. I get to
I
see
know.
the big reveal. Yeah.
Let's see, preferences.
I will get my space collage too to show.
Yes. I was afraid this would happen with the blur. So you're just gonna have to see my messy basement
Okay, that's all right.
instead. So this one is from Canada, and it's a
Beautiful.
souvenir sheet. So it's like a full sheet, and the
Yeah.
stamps are here. And
They're so long. That's a
yes.
funky shape. I like
So it's
that.
sort of like this, it's just got everything. It's got a set like a sentiment thing. And I just think it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then this one, I love this one. This is like metallic-y,
Mm.
very pretty. That one was from Australia. And
Awesome.
then I have this one from San Marino is like holographic. It's really hard to see, and I don't have my
Wow.
tongs right next to me, so I'm going to keep
No,
it
I
in
see. That's really cool.
there. And
Yeah.
then so one of the when I first started collecting fairly early on, the eclipse stamps came in.
I was just going to talk about those. These
I
are
know.
so cool, everyone.
If,
So
if you want to talk, you can talk about them too,
sure,
because they are so cool.
you can show and I will tell. Absolutely. So pretty much these forever stamps, they're from the US. If you hold your warm finger, it's like heat sensitive. And if you hold on the black moon, it turns kind of silver and it kind of reveals the moon behind the eclipse.
I know
So
my
this is a
hands
really
are
great
too,
example of
I
like
know.
philately and technology kind of coming together.
My
And
hands are too cold right now, I think,
oh no.
to make it work, but it totally works. And when I first got it, it was like going out into the hot sun was so cool.
Yeah.
Because
I
it
know when
really
I was younger, we
works.
had some of those in my house and I used them all up sending things to my friends. But
Yeah,
yeah, I
it's
still have
so
some
cool.
around and they're really neat.
I
I know
know.
for my space interests, I think a big part of it is that my grandfather is very fascinated with space. You know, he goes down to Florida for vacations and always watches the launches and tells me
Oh,
about
so
them.
cool.
So this is a way for me to connect with him over a shared subject.
Yeah.
So this is a collage I made of
Yes.
space
Mm-hmm.
things. So again, there's a lot of Apollo
Yeah.
imagery in there, a lot of things about, exploration, imagery of
Yeah.
like the
And I did look it up. I
astronauts.
couldn't find a lot. I when you posted about the Apollo
Yes, these
16,
Apollo ones,
and I
there are a
found
big
them. I
set of
found
them.
one set for sale on eBay, but I can't find like any like information on like
Yeah,
who did the
mysterious.
artwork.
Sometimes I tend to sometimes buy like big bulk, like even 1,000 bag, just or 1,000 piece like bags. And a
Mhm.
lot of them are just strange ones, like you said, that might be from countries that existed for like 25 years,
Yeah.
maybe. So this is a great example too of how like philatelists we can connect and we can help each other find out
Mhm.
information. Someone like me who's fairly young and can't like travel or like doesn't have maybe the most access to all the research technology can go to adult collectors and say like, hey, help me find out more about this. So that's a really great
Mhm.
way we connect with each other.
Yes. And I love I did a couple when I first started collecting. I made a couple of small, very similar collages to
Yeah,
your frames for a few of my friends. And I found
you make great
stamps that,
gifts. Oh yeah,
yeah. And I found stamps that were sort of relevant to like topics that we're all like interested in. And when I
definitely.
gave them to them, I found out that like one of my friends, she's like, I used to collect stamps when I was a kid, and I had no idea. And even like my best friend was like, I totally collects like like her father started her collection like of like just full
Yeah,
sheets of stamps. And she's like, so it was so funny because it's one of those things I sort of started doing in isolation and then
yeah.
realized that there are more people than you may realize who do this.
Absolutely. I know just in conversations in my community, I think I am now at my fourth inherited stamp collection from people because
Wow.
they just have them in their attics, they're in their basements, and they're like, my kids don't want this, but we don't want it to just be thrown
Yeah.
out. Usually they're asking if there's something of value there, which I'm not super concerned about that aspect of collecting, but it's always really fun to see, these old basically family archives of like people's
Mm-hmm.
hobbies and kind of what people's interests were at that time. And I mean, you're right that it starts out in isolation a little bit, especially me, a 16-year-old doing this hobby. It's not really common with people my age. And sometimes that can be ostracizing. It can feel lonely. But then when we connect with our community about it, with older adults or people in online communities, then we can really come together and learn all about our different collecting styles. And that's really cool.
No, I totally agree. It's it's one of those things like I feel like a lot of the organizations need to sort of like really embrace social media and technology, because I think there are more people out there who are still interested in stamp collecting than they realize. I don't think
Definitely.
their membership numbers reflect the interest that is there.
Yeah.
And so it's, yeah, and that's, I mean, that sort of kind of leads me into why I started Women Who Stamp.
True. Yes. Please talk about that.
So I mean, are you, if we're ready to talk about that, I can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, so as I was trying, I've been working on my Master of Fine Arts in integrated design at the University of Baltimore. And it's like I said, I'm already a graphic designer. My background is in print design. I've been designing for over 15 years. And one of the things with integrated design is you learn print, web, video, motion, writing. It's sort of a whole encompassing design program. And for your thesis, you need to identify a problem, and you basically use what you've learned to figure out how to help solve the problem, something that hasn't been done before. And I I'm interested in stamps. Stamps and design have a very long history. I mean, it's so intricately tied together.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of possibilities with that. But when I was reaching out to people in the, different organizations, and I got the demographic numbers for the American Philatelic Society.
Yes.
And I was
are you a member?
I am a member.
I am as well. Yeah.
Yes, I've been a member for about 3 or 4 years now.
I think I just got mine this past summer, but yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like 9% women only. And average age 71 years old. And so, I mean, that was pretty, I mean, I sort of knew that. I mean, I knew it's,
Yeah.
But I didn't think
that is
kind
of the outward image of the hobby to most people. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but I was connecting with so many women on Instagram that I was just like, what's going on? Like, what's the disconnect here? Like, and I started doing chain cards too. I don't know if you know what stamp chain cards are.
Please tell us.
So chain cards are where the group is typically organized on Instagram, and it's going to have 4 to 5 members. Each member is going to contribute 2 stamps, or like a mini sheet or an extra large stamp or something. And there's a topic, there's a theme. So some of the most basic ones are birds or flowers, but they can get really specific, like, a certain type of flower, or and it really just is like whoever's hosting the group, they just put it out there and say, hey, I'm looking for members for this chain card. And they get 4 to 5 members, because that's what it takes to basically fill a postcard.
Yeah.
And so then this card goes from one person to another. So your card goes from you to the next person, all the way around the world, typically around the world. Sometimes it stays within a country, but for the most part, it's worldwide.
Yeah.
And when you get your card back, it's got all these stamps from around the world based on that one theme. And so I was actively doing that. And those, I would say, for the most part, are almost entirely women. There are a handful of men who have been a part of it. But for the most part, I would say I've almost entirely been with women. And it's with those groups too, I know sometimes social media can be very, especially stamp collecting accounts, like, oh, is this a guy or a girl, or,
Sure, yeah, it's not always obvious.
It's not always obvious, but we really get to know each other because we have message threads, and we're sharing our contact information, and we just end up talking about our lives sometimes, if we have if we've got a chain card, but we're super swamped at work, or we have a family member who's sick or something, we express that, hi, I've got the card, your card is safe with me, but it's going to take me a while to get it back out. So you kind of develop these relationships with these people from around the world. Yeah. And when I started, so I realized that, and I thought, okay, well, something's happening here. There's this disconnect, and I want to figure out more about this. And that's basically when my project started. I started doing surveys, and built my entire thesis around basically, where are the women philatelists? They're out there, but why aren't they in societies and organizations? And so now I have my social media accounts that I try and post a variety of information that women will be interested in, but it's really, the purpose of it is to try and get anyone interested in some kind of stamp or snail mail postcards to sort of realize that, it's not just an old man's hobby. There are women, and, there are more women than they realize. And if we all sort of band together and become members of these organizations and go to the stamp shows and sort of stand up, that's really what it's going to take for us to be represented. And this has been an ongoing thing since the start of philately.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not, I think my one project is going to solve the entire problem? No, but I do think that it can be beneficial. And in addition to the social media accounts, I'm working on a book. And so I've been interviewing women in philately. And so the book will have interviews with these women, and just to showcase the diverse range of women who do collect and what they collect and how they got into collecting. I also include the history of sort of the exclusion of women
Yeah.
in philately, as well as their achievements. And so that's something that will continue to be a work in progress even after I defend and graduate.
Mhm.
But it is something that I'm planning to complete, and I will probably self-publish myself.
Wow. It feels like our projects have very similar goals. Yours to get more women involved, and mine to get women and younger generations involved in
Yes.
stamp collecting too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I
So
love it because I think I've always, like, one of the things that's always been like, there's always been this Boy Scout badge, why isn't there
exactly,
one for
yeah.
Girl Scouts? And
Yeah,
my
as someone who's a member of both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts very actively, that is something that I noticed, a disconnect and an issue that was happening is that, there's this really good laid out set of, rules and requirements in the BSA merit badge, but also those might be a little outdated or inaccessible for everybody. So that's why I aim this patch can be earned by anyone in BSA or Girl Scouts, or even non-Scouts too, who just want to explore this hobby and then earn a cool little patch to go with it.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I think our goals are really about accessibility of the hobby, expanding it to a more diverse audience and more diverse perspectives, and all in all, just kind of breaking down the wall that this hobby is like for old nerds.
Yeah.
For everybody, doesn't matter where you are in the world, how much, money you have to spend. You don't have to do that. One of my favorite things to do is what I call like found collecting. Mail comes into your house, has a cool stamp, cut it out and keep it.
Mhm.
It's as simple
Yeah.
as that.
It
Absolutely.
is. And I think too, like you said, you've gotten a lot of collections. People are like, oh, you collect, here, take this
Yeah,
collection.
boxes. Yeah.
And when I first told my dad I was collecting, my dad's always been a collector of various things, his whole life. And I've sort of done the same. But
Definitely. Me too.
when growing up, he never, I mean, he never collected stamps. That was not what he was actively collecting. And so when I told him that, oh yeah, like I'm collecting stamps now, he was like, I can't believe that. He's like, I just got rid of I've been just getting rid of it all.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
when he was in high school and in college, he would send off for first day covers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he's luckily scrounged up a few things. And so I do
That's
have
good.
a few covers that have like his name on it because it was the ones he got and sent back to him. But he has friends who are also collectors of everything, kind of like him. And so I have been fortunate enough to be given similar things like these just, tins of stamps and
Yeah, I know for me, my aunt a couple
Mhm.
months ago sent me just like a full box, just full of stamps.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are from like war correspondence from like other
Yeah.
countries and, Europe and Asia and everything. So it's all really fascinating how,
Yeah.
people will just be like, here, it doesn't seem
Yeah.
valuable to me, but to us, it's like,
Mhm.
yes.
And I think that can really happen. So if people start collecting and the older people in your world are like, oh, you collect? They're going to know people who know people. And then you're going to just
Yeah.
start getting stuff. And like, even my dad, he'll get a box of, he's like, oh, I just bought a lot. And here off eBay, here you go. If there's things you don't want in there, one day you can sell them or something, but here you go. Because he's very supportive of collecting in
Yeah, that's
general.
wonderful.
Yes. And so,
Yeah,
it is one of those hobbies that can be really inexpensive. And if you go to stamp shows, it
for
can be
sure.
even more. The most recent stamp show I went to, it was my first show back since the pandemic. And it was on like the last day, the last 3 hours of the show. And there's always vendors there who have like the dollar box of like covers and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I was just digging through this box, and the dealer came up, and because it was the last day, he said, anything, it's $1 per piece up to 10 pieces. Anything after that is 50 cents. So I got like, and yeah, I mean, I just spent time going through. And so I think I spent $25 and I must have had like 50 covers,
That's
like
awesome. I
literally
know
50
me, if
covers.
you gave me a deal, I'd say I'll take the box.
I mean, yeah, it was just, it's one of those things. So it can be, especially if you go to stamp shows and
Yeah.
I know there are some people who buy just like the bags of, unclipped, like you mean unsoaked stamps, and they just take it, and
Yep.
I think that can be very inexpensive as well.
Yeah, I know my grandmother cuts them out. She receives a lot of mail at her job, and so she just saves boxes of them for me, or envelopes full of just rips
Mhm.
off the top of the envelope. And so we connect over that too. We cut them out. I tell her about them. Yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
so great.
So for our final question this evening, do you have any advice for young historians, philatelists, collectors, anyone who kind of wants to get into this hobby or a similar hobby?
I think the biggest thing is probably just to engage. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to go to stamp shows and just seek information. I think even engaging online. And I know, I'm not sure what things are like now for, teenagers and young adults online. But I do think that even local clubs would be thrilled if a young person, I mean, I was the
Definitely.
youngest. I recently joined my local philatelic society, and I was the youngest person at the meeting. I'm 40 years old and I was the youngest person at the meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna mention earlier, it seems like when we talk about young collectors, it's both of us, age
Yes,
16.
it is.
You're
It totally,
considered young
I've been
collectors.
called kiddo,
Yeah.
like, like it's anywhere from 18, I mean, 18 or younger, but like, I'd say maybe like, yeah, 16 to 40, you are considered young.
Yeah.
And
Which
so
is why we're here.
yes, and so it's just this, they are more than interested. And it was really cool because not only were they thrilled that I was there, they actually sought my opinion on things. They were
Nice.
talking about, website and their upcoming stamp show. And they asked me like, what do you think about this? And so I think that I think women and young people have been historically mistreated in the hobby many
Definitely.
times. I think it still happens today,
Mhm.
but I think that if you don't put yourself out there, then it's never going to get better. And so I, went there. I was one of two women in the room. I was the youngest one, and this organization actually happens to, they value my membership. They
Yeah.
want me to show up to the meetings.
Incredible.
And then they have a room full of stamps that get donated, and they're like, Stacy, why don't you go through? Oh, you like space? Oh,
Yeah.
your daughter likes cats. I mean, and they just brought me bins of, here are space stamps. Take what you want. Here, over here, we've got our little envelopes, like the glassina. We got those
Yeah. Yeah.
here. We have tongs here. I mean, they were just so welcoming, and it was so
Yeah.
wonderful that I think it's really important. Just, and with technology, like, it's so easy. I think a lot of people say, oh, I didn't know that existed, but you can Google stuff. And I think that's really
Yeah.
important. I mean, it's, when I'm trying to find out information on stamps, that for the most part, that's what I do.
Yes.
I just search the best I can and see what information I can find. And the same can be done for stamp shows and clubs. And like a good place to start is the APS, because I think with the
Mhm.
American Philatelic Society, you get the publication and they have a lot of local information. They have information on their website too.
Yeah.
And so it's a really good place to start, just to be involved. I think too, if somebody's interested in the hobby, just pick something that you like. You can start small, like there's literally a stamp for everything.
Yeah. There's stamps with Star Wars and cartoon characters and
Yeah.
music and gardening and all. Yeah. Anything
Mhm.
you like, any hobby you have, tons of sports stamps too.
Sports. Yeah.
Yeah. If you just
Yeah.
want to have more pictures of your favorite things, there is a stamp for you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it is nice because I mean, people do joke that, oh, I thought it was going to be good to collect stamps because it wasn't going to take up much space. And then you end up with binders and
If I could
binders.
show you my floor in here right now, yeah, it takes up some
I
space,
guess.
but Again, you
Yeah.
can collect it however you want. You can store it however you
Yes.
want. There's no pressure ever to store it in perfect, neat albums. I know the way I collect is I put them into collages.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm going to work on a big, like full poster size, just
Mhm.
frame full of stamps.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I know there's actually somebody who I interviewed for my book who I will send you her information because she makes collages
Oh,
and
what is her Instagram?
she's not on Instagram.
Oh,
She's a
really? Okay.
professor.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, so she's not on social media. She's a part of Esper, and her name's Dr. Mary Love. And she makes these beautiful collages. She'll take posters and artwork that sort of already exist, and then she preserves the stamps properly when she's making them. So there's, and she just does these displays and she educates. Like her idea, she believes that stamps should teach. And so she
I
uses
agree.
these as a teaching tool. And it's
Awesome.
very cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, I keep my covers. For the most part, my covers are in boxes still because
Yeah.
they take up a lot of space, and it's, but my stamps, I do like to sort. I love to organize. I mean, I love
Same.
organizing. And so that's part of that is part of the fun for me is organizing my stamps. So I do have my space covers are in the album with my space stamps, but it's getting very full. So
Yeah.
I just upsized to a 3-inch binder, and I was like, oh,
Whoa.
I should have gotten more because this is full now. I have no room to grow.
Oh, goodness.
Um, but yeah, no, it is it's a great hobby.
Yeah.
And I do think that I think there's something for everyone.
Yeah, there's a place for women, there's a place for young people. And
Mhm.
if you're someone like me who lives in a pretty rural area where you don't have access to stamp shows, you don't have access to clubs, and if you do have clubs, they're pretty much defunct now. Just go on the internet,
Yeah.
Google stamps, Google, like I said, flower stamps, sports stamps,
Mhm.
things like that. That if you just want to look at some really cool stuff, learn some history about your favorite things, stamp collecting is absolutely the place to start.
Yes, and even the USPS website,
Mhm.
they've got philatelic stuff as well. So
Yeah.
they have their first day covers, and I know of a lot of people who, like cachet artists, they
Mhm.
will they'll buy the covers already made sometimes and do their art on top of
Yeah.
it. But it's also, the information is out there, and if you can send off to get the first day, postmark and receive everything back. Like
Yeah.
it's, you buy a sheet of stamps, you stick them on an envelope, you send those out, and they, as long as you include an envelope, they'll come right back to you.
Yeah.
So it's a way, like you said, like you're in a very rural place, but it doesn't
Mhm.
mean you can't have access to
Yeah,
materials. Um,
definitely.
yeah.
Well, before our Zoom meeting times out, thank you, Stacey, so much for doing this interview. I hope viewers and patch earners, I hope this has taught you a lot about the world of stamp collecting, talking to a collector, actually two collectors here. And I hope this really inspires you to pursue, if you already have a collecting hobby, keep at it, keep growing your collection. Or if you're looking to get into stamp collecting, definitely, like we said, just give it a Google. That's really all it takes. Thank you so much, Stacey. Have a
Thank
good
you
night.
so much.